Well, the AFL injury list has been updated as it is every Tuesday, and it's good news for the Bombers. It looks like the bye has come at a good time for us, and we're about to welcome back a quartet, maybe even a quintet of players for our next match against the Gold Coast. And we're going to talk about that now in this video. So San Durham, firstly, has completed his 2-match suspension, so he will be available for our next match against the Gold Coast. But the good news is we have probably 5 players who are ready to come back into the team. So the question really is not so much whether they are right to come back in, but whether they will all come back into the side, and also who do they replace. That, to me, is really the interesting aspect of this. Jordan Ridley, first of all, has a hamstring injury. He's 1 week away right now. So he will be right to resume for the match against the Gold Coast if selected. Zach Reid also will be available for selection. As of today, he is 1 week away. So for our next match against the Gold Coast, which is 2 weeks away from today, he will also be right to come back in. My suspicion would be Reid and Ridley would probably come straight back in. I think they're good enough to not be playing in the reserves. Mason Redman as well with a calf injury is 1 week away. I would suggest that Mason Redman probably also comes straight back into the side, but we will see. Kyle Langford is 1 week away with his quad injury, so he will be right to come back into the team in 2 weeks' time. And Saad El Houli with a hamstring injury as we speak is 1 week away. So he also, with 2 weeks before our next game, will be available for selection. Now, of those players, I would think that El Houli most likely comes back through the reserves. He's obviously not a, fully fledged, established member of the team as is. So I don't think he'll be coming straight back in. Plus, we also have no shortage of midfielders, running players, that sort of thing anyway. The question is, of the other 4 players, Ridley, Reid, Redman and Langford, how many of those players come back into the side? So it's going to be a very, very delicate balancing act. Also, who comes out of the side? That's the other thing, who comes out. So obviously you look at Laverty, probably comes out. You look at Blackiston, I would suggest would come out. He was filling in for a couple of weeks, admirably, doing, his job, as a trial player, I guess, playing in a position he wasn't familiar with. Pryor's an interesting one. I think he's played every game this year, but, is it certain that he could hold his spot in the team? Certainly sort of Blackiston and Laverty look like the ones that would come out. But will Langford come back straight into the team? So he is the one, just because there's so many players and because his injuries, he's had 2 long-term injuries this year, he's the one I don't think we would necessarily need to rush back. The others, Redman, has been basically injury-free for the majority of Brad Scott's tenure. Reid has had injury problems all through his career, but just had the one injury this year. And Ridley, like Reid, has had injury problems, but this year just had the one. But of course, Langford's had the 2, and the quad injury is probably the most serious of them. So I think Langford probably comes back through the reserves. And the other thing, and I was thinking about this as well with Langford, we don't really have a shortage of sort of tall key position forward line players. As the team currently stands, we have Caddy playing at full forward. We have Archer May, who kicked a couple of goals last week and looks like he'll hold his spot in the team. We've got Peter Wright, who's still playing well at the moment and doing well enough to hold his spot in the team. We've got McMahon, who kicked 5 goals last week in the reserves and is actually Essendon's leading goal kicker in the reserves this year, despite only playing 4 games or something, as a player who could potentially come into the team. So, putting Langford into that forward line, which, let's face it, that's where Langford has played pretty much the entirety of his career under Brad Scott. I know before that he played in different positions and played in the midfield, but since Brad Scott's been coach, he's basically been a permanent forward. So you're asking, Langford to fit into a forward line that's already got Caddy, Wright, May, McMahon on the, perhaps ready to come in after playing a good game in the reserves. It's very, very difficult to look at that forward line and kind of find balance. They're all sort of okay players, but we do there are a lot of players that kind of seem to be vying for the same position. So what they do with Langford, to me, is going to be interesting. It seems a no-brainer that Reid and Ridley come back in, but Langford, just because of that, the nature of the forward line. So Peter Wright is kind of, frustratingly, and I say this with affection, frustratingly playing still pretty well, meaning he's can't get dropped. Now that's good. You want players playing well, but it's kind of leading our forward line to be unbalanced. Caddy, Wright, May, McMahon, and now Langford. I just don't know how everyone fits in there unless he does go back to the midfield somehow where he has played before. So that's going to be interesting to see how we structure the side. So as for the other players, Jaden Nguyen, still with his foot injury. He is 2 weeks away, so only a couple of weeks away from resuming. So he might be ready to go for the next VFL game in 2 weeks' time. Ben Mackay still can't run yet. He still has that foot injury. His injury is kind of similar. Well, it's not quite similar to Harrison Jones, but it is in the sense that they both can't engage in running. And until they can both engage in running, then they're still TBC, to be confirmed, because until they can get their fitness levels up, then it's very, very difficult to know when they're going to come back. I think Harrison Jones will probably be available to come back this year. Mackay, I think, is probably going to miss the remainder of the season. I think we have to prepare ourselves for him missing the remainder of the season. Nick Cox with concussion as well, went to that panel, the AFL panel. That was the same sort of that group that ruled out McGovern from West Coast and retired him. They haven't done the same for Nick Cox. So where that will leave him at the end of the year is going to be a source of contention. I hope he has another go at it. I'd like to see him get one more go at it. We don't know if that's the case. The concussion's very serious, so we don't really know. It's kind of very much up in the air. It's kind of almost out of his hands at the moment. But he will be hoping to get that part of his body right and go through another pre-season, because he's still young enough that he'd still want to have another crack at it, unless the club deems that he is tradable or should be delisted or whatever. But I guess we'll find out. And the remaining players are the 4 players with the long-term injuries: Nick Bryan, Sam Draper, Tom Edwards, of course, and Lewis Hayes, who will all miss the remainder of the season. So it's good news. We've got 5 players coming back for our next game, or available to come back for our next game, 6 if you include Sam Durham. So that should be strengthening our team. And I actually think we're a bit of a chance of an upset against the Gold Coast. I think that it's a match that they will start favourite in, and they should start favourite in. They've got a pretty young, dynamic team, but they have lost 3 in a row. They do play Melbourne in between playing us, so they're probably going to be coming off a win. But I just feel that Marvel Stadium, it's a kind of winnable game. It's that type of game where you're underdogs, but it sort of feels like it's got a bit of an upset written on it. Remember, this is the team that lost to Richmond earlier this year at Marvel Stadium. So I think with a few players coming back in, we're going to be a good chance to cause an upset. Not saying it'll happen, but I certainly think it's the kind of match that has sort of upset written on it, and we're going to be a good chance in that game. But anyway, we've got 5 players coming back. Let me know in the comments what you guys think in terms of who do you think should come back in? How should we stagger them all back in? Should we bring all these 5 players back in at once? Remember, it's 6 if you include Durham, and Durham is a certainty to come back in. That's a certainty to come back in. So that's 6 players that are ready to come back in. So how do you stagger them all back in, given that Durham is a certainty? And who would you stagger back in? Would you bring them all back in at once? Who would you play in the reserves? And also, who would you leave out? Who would you bring out of the side? I'm assuming you guys would probably drop Laverty and Blackiston. That would be my predictions. But who else would you drop? I'd like to know in the comments. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, if you like this content. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.